The silver bracelet caught the streetlight as it lay in the fallen leaves. Delicate chain broken, clasp torn open as if ripped away in struggle. 2 blocks from Waco Central High School, scattered across the sidewalk like breadcrumbs leading nowhere. October 22, 1988. 17-year-old Jennifer Hayes had walked this route home from homecoming dance rehearsal 1,000 times. Tonight, she would never complete the journey. By morning, only her bracelet remained, glinting in the autumn dawn like a silent accusation. Jennifer Hayes represented everything a small Texas town celebrated. Straight-A student, student council president, debate team captain, the kind of teenager who volunteered at the local library on weekends, who helped younger students with homework, who never missed church on Sundays with her family. She had wavy auburn hair that caught the light when she laughed, green eyes that sparkled with intelligence and ambition, and a smile that her classmates would later describe as infectious. At 17, she stood on the precipice of a future that seemed limitless. That Thursday evening, October 20th, 1988, had been unremarkable in every way that would later haunt those who'd seen her last. Jennifer attended her regular classes at Waco Central High School, a sprawling brick building that had educated generations of Texas students. She sat through advanced chemistry, where she'd scored the highest grade on the midterm exam. She participated actively in American history, raising her hand to debate the implications of the civil rights movement. She ate lunch in the cafeteria with her close friends, laughing about weekend plans for the upcoming homecoming dance. After final bell at 3:15 p.m., Jennifer attended student council meeting in room 204, discussing fundraiser details and decoration themes for Saturday's dance. Her responsibilities as president meant she stayed until 4:45 p.m., ensuring every committee had clear assignments. She then spent 45 minutes in the guidance office with Mr. Travis Coleman, the school's head guidance counselor, reviewing her college applications. This had become their routine over the past 2 months. Mr. Coleman had taken special interest in Jennifer's future, helping her craft the perfect essays, suggesting scholarship opportunities, writing what he promised would be stellar recommendation letters to Stanford, her dream school. "You're going to do amazing things, Jennifer," Mr. Coleman had told her during their session that afternoon, his words preserved in her friend's memory, because Jennifer had shared them excitedly later. "Universities will be fighting over you. You have a gift, and I'm honored to help you share it with the world." Jennifer left the guidance office at 5:52 p.m., her folder of college materials tucked carefully in her backpack. She waved to Mr. Coleman through his office window, calling out, "See you Monday, Mr. Coleman. Thank you again." He waved back, watching her walk down the corridor toward the exit, her figure disappearing around the corner. At 6:15 p.m., Jennifer arrived at the school gymnasium for homecoming dance rehearsal. The decorating committee needed measurements for banner placement, and as student council president, she'd volunteered to help. The gym bustled with activity. Students measured walls, tested sound equipment, arranged chairs. Jennifer worked alongside them, her characteristic enthusiasm making even mundane tasks feel important. She left the gymnasium at 7:43 p.m., telling her best friend Sarah Matthews that she needed to get home to finish a chemistry assignment due tomorrow. Before we continue with what happened next, take a moment to subscribe to Uncovered Crime Archive. This channel explores cold cases that haunted communities for decades before modern forensic science finally delivered justice. Cases like Jennifer's prove that even when investigations go cold, the truth can still emerge years later through determination and technology. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss these powerful stories of families who refuse to give up. The walk from Waco Central High School to Jennifer's home normally took 18 minutes. She'd timed it countless times, knowing her parents expected her home by 8 p.m. on school nights. The route followed Palmer Street for 3 blocks, turned left onto Houston Avenue, continued past Miller's hardware store and the First Baptist Church, then right onto Sycorn Street, where the Hayes family lived in a 2-story white house with blue shutters. Jennifer never arrived home. At 8:15 p.m., her mother, Carol Hayes, called Sarah Matthews asking if Jennifer had stayed late at school. Sarah explained Jennifer had left the gym at 7:43 p.m., heading straight home. Carol's concern escalated to alarm. She called the school. No answer. She called other friends. No one had seen Jennifer since rehearsal ended. By 8:45 p.m., Carol and her husband David were driving the route between school and home, their headlights sweeping across empty sidewalks, their voices calling Jennifer's name into the October darkness. At 9:23 p.m., David Hayes called the Waco Police Department to report his daughter missing. The dispatcher initially suggested Jennifer might have stopped at a friend's house, that teenage girls sometimes lost track of time. But David's voice carried a father's certainty that something was profoundly wrong. His daughter was responsible, punctual, considerate. She would never worry her parents this way. Within 30 minutes, 2 patrol officers were retracing Jennifer's route home, their flashlights probing shadows and doorways. Officer Michael Torres made the discovery at 10:07 p.m. 2 blocks from the school, on the stretch of Palmer Street lined with oak trees shedding autumn leaves, his flashlight beam caught something metallic among the orange and brown foliage carpeting the sidewalk. He knelt down, careful not to disturb the scene, and identified a silver bracelet with a broken clasp. Nearby, scattered across approximately 15 feet of sidewalk, lay several items: a college catalog for Stanford University, 2 pens, a spiral notebook with Jennifer Hayes written on the cover. The scene suggested struggle, but not the violent confrontation investigators typically associated with abductions. The items appeared dropped rather than thrown, scattered in a pattern suggesting Jennifer had been moving forward when something caused her to release them. The bracelet's broken clasp indicated it had been pulled or torn from her wrist with force, but there were no signs of prolonged struggle, no torn clothing, no additional evidence of violence beyond that initial contact point. Detective Sarah Brennan arrived at the scene at 10:34 p.m., her years of experience telling her immediately that this case was different from typical teenage runaways. The scattered belongings, the broken jewelry, the complete absence of the victim despite evidence of recent presence, all pointed toward abduction. By midnight, the street had transformed into a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the block. Evidence technicians photographed every angle, collected every item, searched for any trace of what had happened to Jennifer Hayes. The Waco Police Department mobilized fully by dawn Friday morning. Over 200 volunteers gathered at the high school parking lot to begin organized searches. They divided into teams, each assigned specific sectors of the city to canvass. Parents, teachers, students, and concerned citizens walked through neighborhoods calling Jennifer's name, checking alleys and abandoned buildings, distributing hastily printed missing person flyers with Jennifer's smiling school photograph. Carol and David Hayes sat in Detective Brennan's office Friday afternoon, their faces etched with sleepless terror. They provided everything they could think of that might help: Jennifer's daily routines, her friends' names, her after-school activities, her dreams of attending Stanford to study biochemistry. They described a daughter who was responsible, focused, ambitious. A teenager who'd never given them a moment of worry until last night, when she simply failed to come home. "She's been working so hard on her college applications," Carol said, her hands twisting a tissue into shreds. "Mr. Coleman, her guidance counselor, has been helping her. She meets with him twice a week. He's been so supportive, writing her recommendation letters, helping her prepare for interviews." She paused, fighting tears. She was so excited. She really believed she could get into Stanford. Detective Brennan made a note of the guidance counselor's name, adding it to the growing list of people who had regular contact with Jennifer. Standard procedure required interviewing everyone in the victim's life, establishing timelines, identifying any unusual interactions or concerning behavior. The investigation would start with those closest to Jennifer and expand outward until they found answers. Jennifer's best friend, Sarah Matthews, provided crucial timeline information. She'd been with Jennifer at the homecoming rehearsal, had watched her gather her things to leave at 7:43 p.m., had waved goodbye as Jennifer pushed open the gymnasium doors. Sarah remembered Jennifer seemed happy, maybe slightly tired from a long day, but nothing suggested distress or concern. She'd been looking forward to the dance on Saturday, had already picked out her dress, was excited about college application deadlines approaching. She showed me the recommendation letter Mr. Coleman wrote for her. Sarah told Detective Brennan during her interview. She was so proud of it. He'd called her exceptional, said she was one of the most talented students he'd encountered in 20 years of guidance counseling. Jennifer said he really understood her potential, that he saw things in her that even she hadn't recognized yet. The high school principal, Dr. Margaret Foster, opened the school's records to investigators immediately. Jennifer's file painted a picture of academic excellence. 4.0 grade point average across all 4 years. Advanced placement courses in chemistry, calculus, literature, history, perfect attendance, glowing teacher evaluations, leadership positions in multiple clubs, 0 disciplinary issues. She was, by every measurable standard, an exemplary student. Travis Coleman, the guidance counselor who'd been working closely with Jennifer on her college applications, appeared at the police station voluntarily Friday evening to provide his statement. At 38 years old, he'd been Waco Central's head guidance counselor for 7 years, respected by faculty and beloved by students for his dedication to helping them achieve their academic dreams. He was married with 2 young children, active in his church, known for staying late to help students with applications and scholarship essays. Jennifer was special, Coleman told Detective Brennan, his expression reflecting what appeared to be genuine distress. Not just academically brilliant, but genuinely kind. The kind of student who makes this job worthwhile. She had been meeting with me regularly since September to work on her college applications. Stanford was her dream, and honestly, I believed she would get in. Her essays were extraordinary, her transcript impeccable. Coleman provided detailed information about his last meeting with Jennifer on Thursday afternoon. They'd reviewed her personal statement for Stanford, discussed her chances at various universities, talked about scholarship opportunities. The meeting had lasted approximately 40 minutes, ending around 5:50 p.m., when Jennifer needed to leave for homecoming rehearsal. Coleman remembered she seemed excited, optimistic about her future, showing no signs of distress or concern. "If there's anything I can do to help find her," Coleman said, his voice catching slightly. "Anything at all. Please don't hesitate to ask. I'll organize student volunteers, coordinate with parents, whatever you need." Jennifer deserves to come home safely. Detective Brennan thanked him for his cooperation and added his statement to the case file. Nothing in Coleman's demeanor or information suggested anything suspicious. He appeared to be exactly what he claimed, a dedicated educator devastated by the disappearance of a promising student. The search for Jennifer Hayes consumed Waco for weeks. Bloodhounds tracked her scent from the school to the location where her belongings were found, then lost the trail completely, as if she'd simply vanished into thin air. Divers searched the Brazos River. Volunteers combed through wooded areas surrounding the city. Police interviewed hundreds of people, anyone who might have seen something, heard something, noticed anything unusual that Thursday evening. The investigation pursued multiple theories. Had Jennifer been taken by someone she knew? A stranger predator? Had she witnessed something that made her a target? Detective Brennan examined every possibility, but each lead dissolved into dead ends. No witnesses reported seeing Jennifer after she left the gymnasium. No vehicles were noted in the area at the relevant time. No one heard screams or signs of struggle. She had simply walked into the autumn evening and disappeared. By December 1988, the active search phase concluded. Police had exhausted immediate investigative avenues without finding Jennifer or identifying viable suspects. The case remained open and active, but practical reality meant resources shifted to other matters. Detective Brennan continued working the case whenever new information emerged, but without witnesses, physical evidence, or a body, the investigation could only circle back through the same questions without finding different answers. The Hayes family refused to accept this transition from active to cold case. Carol Hayes took a leave of absence from her job as a bank teller to focus entirely on finding her daughter. David reduced his hours at the automotive repair shop where he'd worked for 15 years. Together, they became advocates, researchers, amateur investigators pursuing any possibility that might bring Jennifer home. Every Saturday for the next 36 years, Carol and David stood on Palmer Street at the location where Jennifer's bracelet had been found. They held signs with her photograph, distributed flyers to passers-by, kept her memory alive through sheer force of will. What began as crowds of supporters gradually dwindled to the faithful few, then finally just Carol and David standing vigil in rain, heat, and winter cold, refusing to let their daughter become another forgotten statistic. Travis Coleman emerged as one of the family's most consistent supporters. In spring 1989, he organized a scholarship fund in Jennifer's name, raising money to help other talented Waco students pursue their college dreams. The Jennifer Hayes Memorial Scholarship awarded its first recipient in May 1989, a young woman planning to study biochemistry at the University of Texas, the same field Jennifer had hoped to pursue at Stanford. Jennifer represented the best of what education can achieve, Coleman said at the scholarship ceremony, his voice heavy with emotion. Her brilliance, her dedication, her kindness. This scholarship ensures that her spirit continues to inspire students who share her passion for learning. Though we don't know where Jennifer is, we know who she was, and we honor that through supporting others who dream as she dreamed. Year after year, Coleman attended the Hayes family's vigils on Palmer Street. He brought coffee in winter, cold water in summer, his presence a constant reminder that at least some people still cared. He spoke at anniversary remembrance events, always emphasizing Jennifer's potential, always expressing hope that answers would someday emerge. The Hayes family came to depend on his support, viewing him as someone who truly understood Jennifer's special qualities because he'd worked so closely with her. Coleman's career flourished in the decades following Jennifer's disappearance. He became one of Waco's most respected educators, known throughout the district for his success in helping students gain admission to prestigious universities. Parents requested him specifically to work with their children on college applications. Teachers praised his dedication. Administrators promoted him to district-level positions overseeing guidance programs at multiple schools. If you're following this investigation closely, take a moment to like this video. These cases need attention, support, and engagement from viewers who understand that unsolved doesn't mean forgotten. Your like helps ensure Jennifer's story reaches people who might make a difference. By the early 2000s, Jennifer Hayes had become one of those cases longtime Waco residents referenced in conversations about local mysteries. "Remember that student who disappeared back in the 80s? They'd say. "The one who was walking home from school?" The details faded with time, the sharp edges of tragedy softening into vague remembrance. Jennifer's smiling photograph appeared occasionally in news retrospectives about unsolved cases, her story told briefly alongside others who'd vanished without explanation. The Hayes family aged around their grief. David's dark hair turned gray, then white. Carol developed health problems stress-related, according to her doctors, that medication could only partially control. Their younger daughter, Jessica, grew up in the shadow of her missing sister, the family's emotional resources consumed by endless searching. Normal family life became impossible when one member's absence dominated every moment, every conversation, every milestone marked by who wasn't there to celebrate. In March 2024, the Texas Cold Case Unit received substantial federal funding through the Justice for Victims Act, enabling the application of cutting-edge forensic technologies to unsolved cases from previous decades. Detective Marcus Webb, assigned to lead the unit's Central Texas Division, selected Jennifer Hayes' disappearance as a priority case. Something about the abandoned belongings, the broken bracelet, the complete absence of the victim despite clear evidence of her presence resonated with his investigative instincts. The evidence preserved from October 1988 sat in climate-controlled storage at the McLennan County Sheriff's facility. Webb requested everything collected from the scene on Palmer Street that night: Jennifer's spiral notebook, her college catalogs, the silver bracelet, and most significantly, the cardigan sweater she'd been wearing, carefully bagged and sealed by investigators who understood even in 1988 that clothing might someday yield evidence beyond what their technology could detect. Modern forensic science had revolutionized criminal investigation in ways unimaginable in 1988. Genealogical DNA analysis, the technique that had solved decades-old murders and identified unknown victims across the country, offered possibilities that seemed almost miraculous. The process combined traditional forensic DNA extraction with genetic genealogy databases, allowing investigators to identify suspects through family relationships, even when the suspect's own DNA wasn't in any criminal database. Webb submitted Jennifer's cardigan to the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Laboratory with specific instructions. He wanted touch DNA analysis performed on areas where an attacker might have grabbed or held the garment during an abduction. The process required extraordinary precision. Forensic scientist Dr. Lisa Chen spent weeks in the laboratory, using advanced extraction techniques to collect microscopic cellular material from the sweater's fabric, particularly the shoulders and upper arms where someone might have restrained Jennifer. The results exceeded expectations. The sweater yielded a clear male DNA profile, distinct from Jennifer's own genetic material. The profile was complete enough for comparison analysis, with sufficient markers to provide reliable identification. But when entered into the combined DNA index system, it produced no match. The person who'd left DNA on Jennifer's sweater had never been arrested, never been convicted of a crime requiring DNA submission, never appeared in law enforcement databases. This was where genealogical DNA analysis became crucial. The profile was uploaded to GED Match, a public genetic genealogy database where people voluntarily share their DNA information to find relatives and explore ancestry. The system compared Jennifer's attacker's genetic markers against millions of profiles, looking not for exact matches, but for familial relationships indicating shared ancestry. Within 72 hours, the system identified distant relatives, third cousins, fourth cousins, people who shared common ancestors with Jennifer's attacker generations back. None of these relatives were suspects themselves. They were simply people interested in genealogy who'd submitted their DNA for family history research, unknowingly providing the key to solving a 36-year-old murder. Detective Webb worked with genetic genealogist Barbara Morrison to construct family trees extending backward through generations, identifying common ancestors, then forward through all their descendants, mapping complex family relationships until patterns emerged. The process resembled detective work on a genealogical scale, following paper trails through birth certificates, marriage records, census data, obituaries, building comprehensive family structures. After 6 weeks of painstaking research, the family trees converged on a specific lineage in central Texas. The common ancestors lived in Waco in the early 1900s. Their descendants included farmers, teachers, business owners, and among them, individuals who would have been adults in 1988, living in Waco, potentially with access to Jennifer Hayes. The list of possible DNA contributors narrowed to 47 males within the appropriate age range who descended from the identified common ancestors. Webb's team began the process of elimination. Which of these men lived in Waco in 1988? Which had connection to Waco Central High School? Which had opportunity to encounter Jennifer Hayes on October 20th? One name emerged from the analysis with devastating clarity. Travis Coleman, age 64, retired guidance counselor, resident of Waco his entire life. His family tree connected directly to the ancestors identified through genetic genealogy. His age was appropriate. His profession placed him in direct contact with Jennifer, and his documented presence at the school on the evening she disappeared gave him opportunity. Webb requested Coleman's medical records through legal channels, citing the ongoing investigation. Routine blood work performed during a 2019 physical examination provided comparison samples. The Texas Crime Laboratory conducted analysis with meticulous care, comparing the DNA profile from Jennifer's sweater to Coleman's medical samples. The match was definitive. The DNA on Jennifer Hayes's cardigan belonged to Travis Coleman. The trusted guidance counselor who'd spent 36 years honoring her memory, who'd established scholarships in her name, who'd comforted her parents at annual vigils, had left his genetic signature on her clothing the night she disappeared. DNA evidence placed Travis Coleman at the scene, but Detective Webb needed to understand motive. Why would a respected guidance counselor murder a promising student he was supposedly helping? The answer emerged as investigators began re-examining everything they thought they knew about Jennifer Hayes's final weeks, looking at her relationship with Coleman through the new lens provided by forensic evidence. Webb's team obtained search warrants for Coleman's home, his current office, and critically archived records from Waco Central High School's administrative files. What they discovered in those dusty boxes stored in the district warehouse transformed the case from unexplained disappearance into calculated murder, designed to silence an uncomfortable truth. In a manila folder marked Personnel Issues 1988, Confidential, investigators found a document that had never made it into Jennifer Hayes's missing person case file. A formal complaint submitted to the school's vice principal, Mr. James Rodriguez, on October 18, 1988, just 2 days before Jennifer disappeared. The complaint had been filed by Jennifer herself, her careful handwriting filling 3 pages, detailing inappropriate behavior by her guidance counselor. Jennifer's complaint described a progression of concerning interactions that had begun in September when she first started meeting with Coleman about college applications. Initially, the sessions were professional and helpful. Coleman provided excellent guidance, helped her refine her essays, offered valuable insights about university programs. But by early October, his behavior had shifted in ways that made Jennifer increasingly uncomfortable. He'd begun making comments about her appearance during their meetings. "You're not just intelligent, Jennifer. You're beautiful. Stanford will be lucky to have someone who looks like you representing their biochemistry program." He'd touched her shoulder unnecessarily while reviewing documents. He'd suggested they meet outside school hours at a coffee shop to work on applications without interruption. He'd asked personal questions about her dating life, whether she had a boyfriend, whether she'd thought about dating older men who could appreciate her maturity. Jennifer had tried to redirect the conversations back to academics, but Coleman's behavior escalated. On October 14th, during what should have been a routine application review session, he'd closed his office door and told Jennifer he had feelings for her that went beyond the typical counselor-student relationship. He said he thought about her constantly, that her intelligence and beauty had captivated him, that he believed they had a special connection. Jennifer had been horrified and frightened. She'd told Coleman firmly that his feelings were inappropriate, that she was his student, that she wanted only a professional relationship. Coleman had apologized, claimed he'd misread signals, promised it wouldn't happen again. But Jennifer no longer felt safe meeting with him alone. She'd documented everything in the complaint she filed with Vice Principal Rodriguez on October 18th. The complaint concluded with Jennifer's request to be assigned a different guidance counselor and her concern that Coleman might retaliate by sabotaging her college applications or writing negative recommendations. Rodriguez had scheduled a meeting with Jennifer for October 24th to discuss the situation and determine appropriate action. That meeting never occurred because Jennifer disappeared on October 20th. Further investigation revealed that Rodriguez had confronted Coleman about the complaint on October 19th, the day before Jennifer vanished. School policy required immediate notification when allegations of inappropriate conduct were made against faculty. Rodriguez's notes from that conversation, preserved in the personnel file, recorded Coleman's response. He denied any inappropriate behavior, claimed Jennifer had misunderstood his mentoring style, suggested she might be emotionally unstable due to college application stress. Rodriguez hadn't believed Coleman's deflections. His notes indicated he planned to recommend Coleman's suspension pending investigation and had scheduled the October 24th meeting with Jennifer to gather detailed testimony. But Rodriguez had made a fatal error in judgment. He'd warned Coleman that if Jennifer's allegations proved credible, his career was finished. He'd given Coleman 4 days' notice that his professional life was about to implode. Coleman had used those 4 days to plan Jennifer's murder. The investigation revealed he'd called in sick to a district guidance counselor conference on October 20th, claiming a stomach flu. He'd remained in Waco instead, waiting. He'd known Jennifer's schedule, knew she'd be at homecoming rehearsal Thursday evening, knew the route she walked home. He'd positioned himself along Palmer Street, waiting in his car parked between streetlights, watching for her to appear. When Jennifer walked past at approximately 7:55 p.m., Coleman had confronted her. Witnesses interviewed in 2024 using memory retrieval techniques recalled seeing a car parked on Palmer Street that evening, though none had thought it significant at the time. Coleman had likely approached Jennifer, tried to convince her to get in his vehicle to talk, perhaps threatening to destroy her college prospects if she didn't comply, or promising to leave her alone if she withdrew her complaint. Jennifer had refused. She'd tried to walk away. Coleman had grabbed her, his hands gripping her cardigan's shoulders, the contact that left his DNA on the fabric. Jennifer had fought back, her belongings scattering, her bracelet breaking as she struggled. But Coleman was stronger, more desperate, and willing to do whatever necessary to silence the threat she represented to everything he'd built. Coleman had transported Jennifer's body in his vehicle to a location he'd clearly prepared in advance. Despite extensive searches following his arrest, Jennifer Hayes's remains have never been recovered. Coleman refused to cooperate with investigators, exercising his right to remain silent throughout interrogation. To this day, he has never disclosed where he took Jennifer, denying her family even the closure of bringing her home for proper burial. On April 17, 2024, Detective Webb and a team of federal agents arrived at Coleman's suburban home at 6:22 a.m. The 64-year-old retired educator answered the door in pajamas, his expression shifting from confusion to resignation as Webb displayed the arrest warrant. His wife, Patricia Coleman, stood frozen in shock as her husband of 41 years was handcuffed and led to a waiting vehicle. Neighbors emerged onto their lawns, witnessing the arrest of a man many had known for decades as a pillar of the community. The news detonated across Waco with the force of a seismic event. Travis Coleman, the respected guidance counselor who'd helped generations of students achieve their dreams, the man who'd established scholarships in Jennifer Hayes' name, the dedicated educator who'd stood vigil with her grieving parents for 36 years, was charged with her murder. The revelation shattered fundamental assumptions about trust, mentorship, and the masks predators wear. Waco Central High School released a statement expressing profound shock and immediately suspended the Jennifer Hayes Memorial Scholarship pending investigation. Recipients of the scholarship over 3 decades found themselves unwittingly connected to their benefactors' guilt-driven deception. The school district launched comprehensive reviews of Coleman's entire career, examining whether other students had experienced inappropriate behavior that had gone unreported or unaddressed. Carol and David Hayes, now in their 70s, received the news from Detective Webb personally. Carol wept, not with relief, but with a complex grief that encompassed decades of manipulation. Coleman had sat at their dinner table. He'd hugged them at vigils. He'd spoken at memorial services about Jennifer's promise and potential. Every gesture of support had been performance, guilt management disguised as compassion, a calculated effort to remain close to the investigation while appearing above suspicion. He looked us in the eyes for 36 years, David told reporters days after Coleman's arrest, his voice trembling with anger and heartbreak. He shook my hand. He told us he'd never stop looking for Jennifer, and all along he knew. He knew exactly what happened to her because he did it. He murdered our daughter and then pretended to mourn her. The trial began in September 2024, drawing national media attention. Prosecutors presented the DNA evidence, the school complaint Jennifer had filed, Vice Principal Rodriguez's notes documenting Coleman's confrontation about the allegations, and testimony from former students who came forward with their own stories of inappropriate behavior they'd been too frightened to report decades earlier. A pattern emerged of a predator who'd used his position of authority to manipulate vulnerable young women, most of whom had remained silent out of fear of jeopardizing their academic futures. Coleman's defense attorneys argued that DNA evidence only proved contact, not murder, that the complaint showed motive, but not action. They suggested Jennifer might have run away, that her body's absence meant reasonable doubt existed, but the cumulative evidence proved insurmountable. The complaint filed 2 days before her disappearance, the DNA on her clothing, the broken bracelet suggesting struggle, the 36 years of calculated deception. On November 8, 2024, after 11 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder. Coleman, now 65, showed no emotion as the verdict was read. Judge Raymond Harris sentenced him to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, his voice firm as he addressed the defendant directly. "You didn't just take Jennifer Hayes' life," Judge Harris stated. "You stole her future, her family's peace, and the truth for 36 years. You used your position of trust to prey on a vulnerable student, then murdered her to cover your crimes. Your subsequent actions, pretending to honor her memory while knowing you'd killed her, represent a level of calculated cruelty that defies comprehension. If Jennifer's story has moved you, please subscribe to Uncovered Crime Archive. Your support enables us to continue investigating cases like hers, bringing attention to families who've waited decades for justice. Share this video with someone who understands that the truth, no matter how long buried, deserves to be uncovered. Leave a comment about how this case impacted you. Every subscription helps ensure these stories reach the people who need to hear them, and reminds us that justice, while sometimes unbearably delayed, can still arrive. Carol Hayes died peacefully in December 2024, 6 weeks after Coleman's conviction, finally able to rest, knowing her daughter's killer would spend his remaining years in prison. David Hayes continues to advocate for stronger protocols protecting students from predatory educators, his daughter's case now serving as a catalyst for policy reforms across Texas. Jennifer's sister Jessica has established a genuine scholarship fund in her sister's name, one built on truth rather than guilt, helping young women pursue careers in science. Some predators hide in plain sight, wearing masks of respectability and trust. Some truths wait decades for technology to catch up to secrets. Jennifer Hayes's case reminds us that the most dangerous monsters aren't strangers lurking in darkness. They're trusted mentors sitting across desks, writing recommendation letters with the same hands that committed murder, and attending vigils for victims they created.